submit the registration slip to the zoning administrator at this time. Following the hearing, we will conduct our monthly business meeting, at which time we will vote on the applications. You may stay and hear how the applications are decided, or you may leave following the hearing. The applicant and the town board will be sent a copy of tonight's decisions. Any other person wishing a copy of tonight's decision should, wait a minute. Any other person wishing to receive a copy of a decision can sign the sheet on the table at the front of the room. Those of you wishing immediate knowledge of the outcome of these proceedings may call the county zoning office tomorrow morning. The procedures will be as follows. After each applicant is read, the applicant, their agent, representative will be asked to present their application, followed by any questions or comments from the committee. Then all correspondence will be read. Then others in favor will have a chance to speak. Anyone objecting will then have a chance to speak. I will then ask for a summary of the committee field observations and staff comments. Finally, the applicant will be allowed a chance for a short rebuttal if they wish. Anyone wishing to speak should use the microphone, state their name, and direct their comments to the committee. I ask that all testimony be kept brief, no more than 5 minutes, and to the point. If you are testifying as a nearby landowner, please tell us where your property is located relative to the subject's property. Tonight's hearing will be recorded, and the recording will become part of the record. Comments that are based on hearsay or secondhand information, as well as slanderous or prejudicial remarks, will be ruled out of order. The committee has looked at all of the properties, and the record will reflect these observations. Any person affected by an administrative decision of the committee has 10 days from the filing of tonight's decisions to make an appeal. Such appeals are heard by the Board of Adjustments. Information and applications are available from the zoning office. The county assumes no liability and makes no warranty as to the legality of any of the construction commenced prior to the expiration of the 10-day period. I will now introduce the committee. To my far left, Mike Kapp, Russell Heisey, Bob Wadle, Terry Pockstead, zoning administrator. My name is Mark Kirschner. Okay, the first application that we will hear tonight is a conditional use. Lisa A. Rosenthal, Red Granite, Wisconsin, has made application for a conditional use in accordance with sections 58-236, paragraph 22, and 58-454, paragraph 34 of the Waushara County Zoning Code to establish a home-based equipment recycling business utilizing an existing 32 by 120 pole barn in the AG General Agricultural Zone. Location: a parcel of land known as Lot 1 of Certified Survey Map number 4825, being part of the northeast quarter of the northeast quarter, Section 21, Town 19 North, Range 12 East, Town of Leola, Fire number N. Or, yeah, I'm thinking of Adams County. Town of Leon, Fire number N3693, County Road E. I know you're not from Adams County. I know you're from the town of Leon. Is the applicant present? Yes, they are.
Yes, they are.
Just state your names for the record.
I'm Attorney J. Stephen Heil. I represent Lisa Rosenthal and her husband, David, here. And we are here tonight to ask you to consider the applicant's request for a conditional use to allow them to operate what we can best describe as a farm implement, primarily a farm implement recycling home-based business. As they have indicated in their application for this, the business that they would be operating would be primarily, if not almost exclusively, operated within the existing pole building that is on this AG zoned property. There would be periods of time where a large piece of equipment might have to be dismantled outside the building if torches are involved or something like that, but the principal business activity would be conducted inside the building. We think that this fits the overall scope of the AG zone here and is not going to be detrimental in any way to the surrounding properties for a number of reasons. First of all, we're talking about an AG-zoned area, which, and the business they're proposing deals with things like trucks and trailers and farm implements, which are being hauled around in AG zones all the time. We're also talking about operating as much of the same type equipment as typically any farm operation would be operating. Less intensive even than a full-time farm operation. The applicant's business, what they're proposing here, is going to be conducted primarily during daylight hours, and even at that it would be limited hours because it would be while the applicants are not working their regular jobs. So I believe at the current time that we're talking about a situation where, for example, David works a second shift job, so we certainly would not have any late night noise coming out of this building. The other thing that I think is important for the board to consider here in this application is that this is not, even though we use the term recycling business, that's simply because there's just, it's hard to come up with another word to describe what they're talking about. But when one thinks about a recycling operation, I think typically you think of a situation where the public is bringing items to a recycling facility, dropping them off. Those are perhaps stored in outdoor bins, or they're stored outside until, in piles or whatever, until such time as the business is able to sort and process those items. That is not what the applicants here are proposing to do. What the applicants are proposing to do here is different in that they actually go out, purchase the junk farm equipment or the whatever's going to be recycled, bring it onto the property, and then they themselves haul it off. The significance of that being they have total control over the flow of materials in and out, as well as the amount of materials there. So we don't have a situation where they're going to get swamped with all kinds of farm implements or something piling up while they try and keep up with dismantling this stuff. They basically do it at their own pace. They're not advertising this as a public business open to the public. If you probably saw from your visit, there's no sign out in front. In fact, if you look from the road, the view you saw coming into the property is pretty much not going to change once the business is operating. Like I said, most of the activity, if not all of it, is going to be conducted inside. If the board feels it's reasonable to require any fences in addition to the blockage provided by that, the visual block provided by that barn, they're more than happy to accommodate that. But since it's not anticipated that we would have implements sitting outside for any length of time, we're really not talking about the situation like a scrapyard or something like that. What they are dismantling is primarily has been used farm implements. There is some other materials brought in from, I believe it was Millsco. Various packages involved that include metal, that they will sort the metal out from the cardboard and things like that, and then sell the metal. But again, it's the type of thing where the applicants bring the materials to the property, so they have control over the amount there. So for those reasons, this is really not the type of business that's going to in any way impact the character of the AG zone that this is in. Like I said, most of the activities are the kinds of things that happen every day on farms in AG zones. You have machine sheds where the farmer's in there working on his combine, welding, cutting, doing whatever he's going to be doing to keep his equipment operating. Tractors running, trucks coming in, hauling whatever the particular crop is. So we don't have a situation where that's going to detract from any of the surrounding properties. So at this point, we would entertain any questions that the board might have for Lisa or David here.
I just have one for you. Would you spell your name? My pen fell apart when I was.
Oh, sure. It's the initial J, Stephen, and Heil is H-E-I-L.
Right, thank you. Major malfunction, it just parts and pieces. You want to scrap this?
I have one question for you. Yesterday, you were discussing things about bringing in some of the older machinery that was still good and people would use it for lawn ornaments or something like that, and you put it out in front and put a for sale sign on it. I'm not sure that you should be doing that.
Well, that is true. That has happened in the past because there is. I grew up on a farm, and farm machinery doesn't hold. That holds bad memories for me, not not sentimental ones. But there is a market for lawn ornament type things, and on occasion they have sold those. The thing I would point the board to is that if you look in the other conditional uses for AG zoned areas, one of those is farm implement sales and service. So, you know, this is not, again, it's the type of use we're talking about here is not all that much different from the type of stuff that goes on in other farm areas. But again, the board here, we would concede the board has discretion if they grant the conditional use to put conditions on that, you know, restrictions or stipulations on that conditional use. And if that's a factor that the board deems important here, my client's principal goal here is to operate the recycling business.
Other committee questions?
Yes, I got a few here. Has there been a recent survey done of the property?
Yes, there is.
Okay. Then you do know where the lot lines are. I guess he pretty much described what you're going to do, but if you've got anything else to add, now would be the time to say what else you're going to do.
Okay.
All right. What sort of materials do you process, and could you describe all the things that you do process and what is necessary to process them thoroughly?
Well, the biggest thing I process is the material I haul from middle school. They just throw everything in a trailer. I bring it home. I sort it. Some of it requires disassembly. Most of it don't. It's basically processing and sorting.
So then it's not farm equipment like the attorney said.
Well, they make tractor seats, skid loader seats.
So that's what you salvage, the seats and the...
Yeah.
Okay. Next question was where your materials come from, but you just said mill skull. Any other sources of product that you recycle?
Auctions.
Can you give us an idea of how many pounds or tons per week of various materials are or will be processed in your facility?
That's a hard one. Most weeks it might be 0 pounds. Some weeks it might be 1,000 pounds. It's, you know, like in the wintertime. Is it going to snow every day? No. Am I going to have iron every day? Probably not.
What's the average?
The most I've hauled in 1 year was 200 ton in a whole year.
A few loads.
And 90% of it didn't even come to the yard. It was just hauled.
It's such a variable. It's really hard to say. I mean, you could have somebody that says, you know, my dad died and I need the farm cleaned out. Well, then you go there and you pick it all up, but that might happen once every 3-4 years. You know, it's such a variable that it's hard to put a number on.
How much noise, dust, fumes with the cutting process or whatever are produced during the processing of these materials? And I guess give us an example of a couple things that you may recycle or salvage and what you have to do to deal with that.
Well, on most farm machinery, you have cast iron pieces. The cast is worth more than the iron. If it's easy to salvage the cast off it, I will cut it off. But a lot of pieces, you have to take the machine all apart to get to a cast out. It doesn't physically make it feasible to do.
For materials, we use like a skid loader
What do you have to do with the Mills Co. stuff besides sort?
Some stuff involves taking it apart, but not much.
Some stuff, if they scrap a seat mold, the value of the mold, the way it is actually no value. I have to take it apart to physically scrap it. So I have to take it all apart, get the garbage out of it, haul the garbage back to mill school, and then haul the product in.
And is all this product iron, or is there tin and
Most of it's,
copper
a
and?
lot of it's aluminum, there's copper in it, there's stainless in it, there's iron on it.
What do you said seats, typically, there's like this foam rubber or whatever, what do you do with that product?
We don't actually get none of that.
You don't?
No, we get, the molds that they make the seats in.
Okay, okay. So it's not the seat itself
The
The
seat
seat
is,
faces themselves, but nothing on them, just the
Okay.
metal part of it. Obviously,
before they put the cushion or whatever on and the
well,
covering?
actually what they do is if they have rejected seats, they cut the foam and stuff off and they haul it up here to the cap settle center
Okay.
for them to straighten out.
Okay. Are there any employees outside of the immediate family, and if so, how many when you're the busiest?
No, there has been in the past the only other person that really works with us is Barry Engel, and we share labor. He helps me to scrap, I help him with field work, and
Okay, what sort of traffic, if this were allowed, do you anticipating, and is there any parking that would be needed to accommodate the vehicles bringing stuff or you taking it out?
traffic should be no different than what it is now, and we have plenty of room for parking.
How many trucks a week would you say on average come in and out, even your trucks?
If I'm lucky enough to haul a load a day, it'd be 5 trucks.
In and 5 trucks out?
It'd be five trucks.
5
out,
and 5?
5 back in. Per day. Per week.
Per
yeah.
week? One a day?
One a day.
Okay, is there any advertising sign being planned? Okay, are you aware of the state building codes and other state requirements, and will they be met if approved? Will all of the processing and storage of the finished product be inside, or will you store it outside till you haul it in?
Some of the stuff will be stored on trailers outside.
And these trailers will be behind a barricade or fence or something, or
Yes, they'll be behind the woods.
behind the woods?
Pardon me, Bob, how long will those, you're into that question, how long will that stuff sit outside, David? I mean,
When the trailer's full, we'll take it in.
okay, so I mean, if you brought it home from work or whatever, the next night it would be everything would be inside the shed? I mean, if you had a trailer load come in, and, how long would it sit outside before you get it?
If I had a trailer load come in and I didn't have time to process it, I would be more than happy to back it inside the shed and store it inside.
That's what I'm.
So then on the other end, once you process it and it's stored on a trailer, on average, how long does the trailer sit there before you can take it in, before it's full?
It could sit there a month, could be sit there a week. Depending on what all comes in and what I sort out.
Now, do you have different trailers for different products then?
Yes.
So you don't load it up with XYZ materials and then drop it off at different places? You just wait for one item, get a semi-load or truckload, and then haul that in? So you wait till you get that truck full? I mean, typically?
Typically I do. If there's a need for the trailer or the box, I haul it in, empty the trailer to use the box.
Okay. Where was it here? If there is outside storage or processing, what kind of materials might be outside, and how much of each material would there be, like a pallet full, semi-load full, if you had to store it outside?
It would be mostly tipper boxes full. They'd be like a 2-yard tipper box to a
Okay.
4-yard tipper box.
Okay. Are all the materials picked up by you specifically and brought to the facility, Or do people drop things off from time to time, and how often would that happen?
We have had stuff dropped off there, and hopefully we've put a stop to it because I ended up with stuff that I had to pay to get rid of that just showed up when we were gone.
You didn't authorize it then, it just happened, appeared.
Yeah, I think we need to make that clear, that what he's talking about, this was not something he invited. I think this was, somehow word gets out that he's doing this, and people just assumed that they could bring some stuff in and drop it off, so that was not something they
That
invited.
might happen once, twice a year. It's not something that happens weekly or anything. All of a sudden, you're like, where'd this come from?
So you know pretty much where 90% or better comes from, if somebody would happen. What sort of sanitary facilities are you planning on having there? Okay.
When you gotta go, do you run back home?
Are there any floor drains planned in the building, and if so, how will these wastes be disposed of? Have you contacted the DNR to see if there are any permits that are applicable for this operation? And you have the permits in hand, or don't need anything? For salvage yard, you don't?
Because we don't deal with foods. We don't deal with cars.
We don't deal with vehicles.
Okay. Okay.
So there's no oil, gas, and everything else.
You're not dealing with any waste involving like drums of
No.
oil or anything like that.
Okay. You're not draining any transmissions or tractor radiators or?
Drain oil we create is out of our own vehicles when we change oil.
So there's no batteries either, no?
Sometimes batteries,
Okay.
but then
And there's nothing required with that? Sometimes it seems like there's, if you have enough batteries, it's,
I don't think we leave enough to.
okay.
Okay, are there any other additions or buildings planned other than what you've indicated on the site plan? Are you planning on a new driveway or any changes to the existing driveway?
We were planning on having a driveway brought in for the field access. And I was hoping we could eliminate the driveway that is for the house and just utilize the wider driveway at the field to supplement both the field and the business.
Just so the record is clear, the field that he's talking about is since this application, since this process started a while back, they have purchased those fields that you saw behind
Okay.
their property, those belong to them now.
So those are yours. Okay. Would you need a separate fire number for this business if it was granted? Going to use the existing house number. Are you operating the business as we speak, or not yet? You haven't run it for 2 years, okay. That's all the questions I have, Mr. Chairman.
Let's see. You answered how long the stuff would be sitting outside. This work that you'd be doing would be daytime only, you specified. There would be no stuff when you get home at 2 o'clock in the morning or whatever from work, or that's when you go to work or whatever. Okay. And you stated all items would be, so I got this clear, all items would be kept inside when they are brought home. A load, you try and put it inside so it's not outside where everybody can see it or whatever. No. Yeah, that's all I got. Just want to clarify a few things. Any other questions, Russell, or you got anything there with the,
No, I don't. I don't have no questions.
Michael? Okay, you can be seated. Thank you. Correspondence?
We have no correspondence?
Anyone in favor to speak or object? We have Richard Doherty. Yep. Would you come up to the podium, please? Take your time. We get paid by the hour.
We split our hours.
I wish. We'll just, you just do as best as you can.
I just want to say we have been through this since we've lived here. If I would have known what was going on the property, that the McKellans own, I never would have bought here in the town of Leon, which is a bedroom residential community. They've been quite noisy, and it led me to take a bunch of pictures and speak to the zoning board or the zoning department, in which case I was informed that they had already been through the court system and told to stop scrapping. But in the end, they went to court again, and the judge was adamant as all get out to say, you must not scrap. And he fined them $6,000 and said, I'll give you a stay, which means, don't pay now unless you screw up. I'm sorry. And they haven't been caught since. But now they're asking for a conditional use, which is, my question is, who's going to enforce the conditional part? So this subject came up a few times. What does it look like when there's scrap laying around outside? Can I hand this?
Yep.
We never understood what was going on over there, and my first recollection was a big yellow school bus sitting in the back of the property, McKellans, and the next day or two, I don't remember exactly, half the school bus was upside down, which confused me. Well, it was cut off, whatever, and then there's the back end of the chassis, the bottom part of the school bus. Ever since then, we kept hearing loud noises, semi-trucks coming and going, what I'm going to call junkyard dogs, barking, and it's just horrendous. And I will throw in one more little tidbit. There are 3 homes right across the street from the McKellans property that went into foreclosure. Now, can I blame the McKellans for it? No, I have no proof of that. But it's kind of odd that all these houses, 3 in a row, and actually there's another one, they all foreclosed. Because maybe the people just gave up and said, I can't sell my house, so I'm not going to pay my mortgage. I don't know. This is just not the place for this kind of business. I would highly recommend that the McKellans go down to Warren Township or some other township that didn't agree to abide by the Waushara County rules. And where it goes from here depends on you guys. I don't know if the town of Leon is going to have a say-so or not. I sure hope they do, because there's no heavy industry of any kind anywhere near us. Thank you, guys.
Thank you. Patricia Doherty? First of all, pardon me, your property is on Blackhawk Avenue?
Correct.
Okay. Yeah.
W3665.
Okay, thank you. Yep, I see it. I was looking at it here.
I am here this evening to contest the request for the conditional use of the purpose for running a home business to recycle machinery. The dictionary's explanation of recycle is to convert waste into reusable material, return material to its previous state, and use again. This is not what this business is doing. Dictionary explanation of salvage: discarded metal suitable for reprocessing, such as trash, scrap, worthless material to be disposed of. Scrap iron to be melted again and reworked. This applies to their operation. Dictionary explanation of scrapping: discard or remove from service an inoperative vehicle, vessel, machine, especially as to convert to scrap metal. So we turn the words around to accommodate the operation or application they are requesting. The pictures I'm going to show the committee today is a sample of what occurred on their property. Not what was seen recently. Zoning has more pictures of this property in the recent years. I've been to the Waushara County Courthouse on the scrapping matter. I've been there with the judge's decision. Also been to the zoning for the variance change, which was denied. The Town of Leon meeting where we looked at their 20-year plan for this area, and it was marked residential, not commercial, not receiving metal, separating metal, grinding or smashing metal, or storing it, working all hours, creating loud machinery noises and vehicle noises. I'm contesting their request for any business which entails recycling, salvaging, or scrapping. I'm a concerned resident, and this is a place for homes and not business. Thank you.
Thank you. No one to speak for information. Staff comments, please.
For the record, the committee has previously been furnished with a copy of the site plan and the information that was supplied by the applicant for this and the other application that they will be considering tonight. I'd like to take some time to explain a little bit about conditional use permits. All defined zones have uses that are permitted outright, such as building a home in the residential zone or having a barn and farm animals in the agricultural zone. These are listed as the permitted uses within the zone. In addition, there are uses that are listed in the code that may be permitted provided certain conditions are met. That's what the applicant is asking us to look at here, is a use that is listed in the code that may be permitted provided it is listed and that the listed parameters or conditions can be complied with, so the use remains in keeping with the surrounding land uses in the area. The applicant has made this application as a home-based business in the AG General Agricultural Zone. Some of the listed home-based businesses are construction, excavation, landscaper, plumber, electrician, and other family-run contractor operations, minor vehicle and body work, small engine repair and sales, small truck and trailer terminals, minor welding and fabrication, storage, sales, and assembly, vehicle towing services, internet-based businesses, commercial storage facilities, and other similar family-based businesses. In some counties, these permits are called special exception permits. It is the landowner's responsibility to provide the information that shows the committee this use is still in keeping with the zone and area it is proposed for, and that the conditions placed on it will ensure it will be a good neighbor to the surrounding landowners. When the committee visited the property, they noted that the property is relatively clean at this time, that there is good visibility at the driveway location, and that there appears to be adequate area to move large equipment around on the yard. As far as my comments go, when we sent the packets out, I gave the committee a few pages from the Zoning Board Handbook, which was compiled by UW-Stevens Point Center for Land Use Education. UW-Stevens Point CLUE is what we call them, is the leading authority on the workings of local zoning boards and board of adjustments in the state of Wisconsin. In this guide, it notes that all zoning codes are set up to list permitted uses within a particular zone, conditional uses within a zone, and then there are unlisted or prohibited uses in the zone. And that's what I feel we're looking at here, a prohibited use in the general agricultural zone, because it is listed elsewhere in the zoning code as a conditional use in the intensive manufacturing zone, and it is not listed as a permitted or conditional use in the AG General Agricultural Zone. To repeat, if a use is not listed, it is the opinion of many in the zoning and legal community that the use is prohibited in that zone. The zoning code lists many permitted uses and many conditional uses, and by doing so, it is intended that all other potential uses not listed or listed elsewhere as permitted or conditional uses in another zone are prohibited uses in the zone they are omitted from, or it is reasoned that they would have been listed there in the first place. Furthermore, that in order to place them on a property, the correct zoning designation and conditional use permit must first be obtained. One more time, I'm going to say it, if a use is not listed in a zone as a permitted or conditional use, by the omission of the listing of that use, it is prohibited. This concept was recently enforced in state law with an Attorney General's opinion in the State versus Circuit Court for Dane County, that when interpreting statutory language, the quote in the Attorney General's opinion said, express mention of one matter excludes other similar matters that are not mentioned. I'd also like to go on to state that we will review the definitions and restrictions on both commercial recycling facilities and salvage yards, and note where they are listed as conditional uses in the zoning code. The definition of a commercial recycling operation means any operation involving the collection of aluminum, glass, paper, and paper products, plastic, or other salvageable material. Under the selected conditional use section, it notes that commercial recycling operations do not involve wrecking, dismantling, or demolition of salvageable material. In addition, such operations do not involve the sorting of refuse to recover salvageable material. Commercial recycling facilities are listed as a conditional use in the general manufacturing zone, but it seems clear that this operation involves more than what even a commercial recycling operation would allow, because the applicant has testified that the materials they bring to the site need to be sorted and in many cases cut up, separated, and dismantled in order to take them in for further processing at another facility. So by the applicant's own testimony, there is processing including sorting, cutting, and torching of metal that is required before it can be taken to a facility for final sale and disposal. When looking at the definition of a salvage yard in the code, we find that it says, quote, means a site or facility at which salvageable materials are stored or sold, or at which wrecking, dismantling, or demolition of salvageable materials are conducted, including but not limited to automobile junkyards, scrap metal salvage yards, and similar uses, except commercial recycling operations, end of quote. It is apparent to me that the operation currently taking place on the Rosenthal property meets the definition of a salvage yard, which is listed as a conditional use in the intensive manufacturing zone. In addition, because it is not listed elsewhere, the use is prohibited in other zones in the county as noted previously. Size of the operation is not a consideration when looking at the definition of a salvage yard, nor is whether the employees are family members or not. It meets the definition of a salvage yard, and it is not listed as a permitted or conditional use, and thus, by the reasoning stated previously, it is prohibited in that zone. I would also point out that there's a multitude of conditions placed on a salvage yard under the selected conditional use sections of the Waushara County Code if one is to be considered in the intensive manufacturing zone. These include setbacks of 600 feet to any public road and 100 feet to side and rear lot lines, fencing or screening with plant material around the entire property so that the salvageable material is not visible from any other property, road, or waterway, and a 100-foot fire break around the perimeter of the property, as well as many other requirements to ensure that neighboring properties are not subjected to health, safety, environmental, or aesthetic harm and possible devaluation of their property. These are some of the most stringent setbacks in our code and apply even when the salvage yard is placed as a conditional use in the intensive manufacturing zone, where it is presumed it will be near other similar uses. By noting that these operations are conditional uses in another zone with very specific setbacks and stringent conditions to be followed, it is reasonable to assume that it would preclude the use from being considered as a conditional use in another zone altogether. And that is what the legal interpretation of zoning codes as written has always been, in my opinion. The Zoning Board Handbook goes on to note when considering what is a conditional use that a conditional use, also known as a special exception in Wisconsin case law, is any exception expressly listed in the zoning ordinance, including land uses and dimensional changes. A conditional use is not suited to all locations in a zoning district, but may be allowed in some locations if it meets specific conditions outlined in the zoning ordinance and is not contradictory to the ordinance's general purpose statement. This means that a specifically listed conditional use is only allowed to be considered in the particular zone that it is listed in, and even then may not be suited to all locations in that zone, but rather only those areas where the site is compatible with the neighboring land uses due to noise, odor, traffic, and other concerns. So even when a conditional use is listed within a particular zone, it must be custom tailored to the specific location that it is being proposed to be located in. And that is why they are listed as specific conditional uses in certain zones and not listed in other zones. I do not believe these considerations are met in the AG or general agricultural zone, and firmly believe that salvage yards are in the intensive manufacturing zone for a reason. Just the name of the zone should give you an indication of the types of operations that will be found there, and they are not general farming operations or a family-run small engine repair shop. The writers of the zoning code placed commercial salvage and recycling operations in the manufacturing zones for a reason. They are similar to other operations found in the manufacturing zones and should be kept with those other similar uses. No amount of conditions will make them compatible with the general agricultural zone. Furthermore, the home-based business definition is noted as follows, and I'll quote here too: means of primarily family-run business established on a parcel with a single or two-family home where the business is incidental and subordinate to the residential use, and where the business conducted would not detract from neighboring land uses, would not pose a threat to public safety, health, or the environment, and where such business can be conducted in such a manner where it would not prevent the property from converting back to strictly a residential use if the business were ever to be abandoned. A home-based business established under this section has to conform to all of the standards listed in subsection 58-236, parens 22, and could include, but are not limited to, businesses that fall within the standards listed, such as construction, excavation, landscaper, plumber, electrician, and other family-run contractor operations, minor vehicle repair and body work, small engine repair and sales, small truck and trailer terminals, minor welding and fabrication, storage, sales and assembly, vehicle towing services, internet-based businesses, commercial storage facilities, and other similar family-based businesses. Please note it does not list a salvage yard or commercial recycling operation or any of the other conditional uses in the manufacturing zones. Salvage yards do not fit in with these types of operations, nor do they compare to any of those listed in scale, scope, or impacts on surrounding property owners. There are many smaller recreational and residential lots in this particular area of the county that could be harmed and devalued by the placement of a salvage yard in close proximity to the agricultural and rural residential uses currently located within 1,000 to 2,000 feet of the subject property. It just does not fit in, nor is it similar to the conditional uses noted in the home-based business section of the zoning code. It is not incidental and subordinate to the residential use. It would detract from the neighboring land uses. It would pose a threat to public safety, health, and the environment. And once established, it is extremely difficult to convert back to strictly a residential use if the business were to be abandoned. Salvage yards have strict placement and permitting requirements for a reason, and allowing one as a conditional use in the AG zone would certainly pose a threat to the neighbors, the environment, and the zoning code itself. And I did take the liberty of printing out a map showing the Rosenthal property and some of the surrounding properties, and you can see that it's wooded and or has some rural residential subdivisions there. So therefore, I feel the application should be denied first and foremost because it is a prohibited use in the AG general agricultural zone by the mere writing of the code and must be located in the intensive manufacturing zone after a conditional use permit has been obtained. This is the only legal interpretation that I can come up with based upon case law, legal interpretations of record, guidance documents related to zoning, and the language within the Waushara County Code itself. If the committee does not agree with that assessment, I feel that this would set a precedent and that many other operations listed in other zones as conditional uses will be sought in zones that they are not listed in or meant for. And this could cause great harm to the properties in Waushara County as well as the zoning code itself. I must also argue that the operation of a salvage facility such as the one that is being proposed is not similar to any of the home-based businesses listed in the code, and no amount of conditions could bring it into keeping with that section of the code. Therefore, it should not be considered as a conditional use under the home-based business section of the code. And finally, if the committee does not agree with my assessment as stated or the guidance contained in case law and the zoning board handbook and feels that the operation should be considered for approval as a conditional use as a home-based business in the AG zone, I would ask that conditions be carefully considered and that conditions placed on any approval would try to address some of the issues that are sure to come up with such an operation. These could include limited hours of operation, restricting operations to a completely enclosed building to prevent noise and other disruptions to the neighbors, restricting work to an impervious surface to prevent any chemicals, solvents, or oils from leaching into the ground, weekly transport of all salvage materials to the final disposal facility, proper disposal of all byproducts of salvaging on a weekly basis, no outside storage of any salvageable material for longer than a week, no semi-trailers may be stored on the property unless they are in weekly use with the operation, no employees outside the immediate family, and compliance And finally, compliance with all conditions of salvage yards as noted in the zoning code, such as setbacks, operational requirements, etc. I think you get the idea. So to recap, I strongly believe that this proposed use is prohibited in the AG General Agricultural Zone, and it is not proper to consider it as a conditional use, and the committee should not consider it as a conditional use, but rather are legally bound to tell the applicant that this operation needs to be located in the intensive manufacturing zone as a conditional use. I also strongly believe that even if the committee would consider this operation as a conditional use in the AG zone as presented by the applicant, it does not fit into the parameters of a home-based business as defined in the zoning code, so the committee cannot legally approve it under those guidelines. And finally, if the committee feels that the proposal does meet the parameters of a home-based business and they do consider an approval, they are legally bound to place conditions on the operation so that it remains in keeping with the surrounding properties and does not prove to be a detraction or devaluation from those properties and their owners. And that's it for my comments.
Okay. The applicant has a chance to come forward and
I'm going to first address some of Ms. Dopp-Hochstadt's comments to you. The one, she's given you some guidance from Zoning Administrator's Handbook. She's given you guidance from an AG's opinion on something, but what she didn't tell you is that Judge Stork, in his decision in this matter on July 11, 2017, that was when the order was entered, specifically found that the definition of home-based business in Waushara County's code does not necessarily exclude activities regulated in other sections of the code. So the idea that somehow just because the activity that's going on here shows up in another section of the code does not mean that you can't consider it as a home-based business. If you look at the definition of home-based business itself, it specifically says that things like auto body, construction, excavating, all those are examples. That is not an exhaustive list. So we disagree with the assessment somehow that what is being proposed here is prohibited in the AG zone. Put the legal end of this aside and just apply, as I said, hinted at before, a little common sense to this. We heard a list of horribles here that need to be implemented here or to protect the surrounding environment, but what we did not hear was any specifics given to you as to what exactly is so objectionable to the character of the surrounding area. Any farm operation in that area is going to involve trucks hauling trailers full of, what's the difference if they're full of iron or they're full of corn? The tractor attached to that trailer makes the same amount of noise. You heard the scope of the use here. It's fairly limited. This is an incidental to their regular employment. This is not a full-time job we're talking about. This is not the primary source of income for these folks. This is an incidental type business that they're proposing. With respect to these effects, there was some mention of harm to the environment. What harm? There are no vehicles being disassembled here. This is not a situation like what you heard the testimony, where we've got a vehicle coming in where you got to drain the antifreeze, drain the transmission, drain the oil, you got tires, you got all of that stuff. We don't have any of that here. You noticed yourself the relative cleanliness of the property. It's back off of the highway. There's the barn that provides a natural fence to the what they use as their staging area there, so to speak, so that most of this activity is not even visible from the highway. So for those reasons, the board's decision to approve a conditional use in this situation is exactly the kind of stuff that's anticipated by the code. If Waushara County did not want this type of activity going on and wanted to specifically include it, if they wanted to specifically prohibit it, they could certainly adopt an ordinance to that effect. But They don't. Just down the road, you've got an auto body shop. How is that any different? You've got Sanders running, you've got air compressors running, you've got more chemicals and fumes and paint and whatnot, solvents going on in an auto body shop than what is going on here. So I'm going to let Lisa here address some of the concerns raised by her neighbor there, specifically with regard to this school bus issue.
That school bus, I'm hoping there's dates on them pictures, because that had to have been, my guess is about 5 years ago. I mean, that's when we did deal with cars. We don't anymore. I mean, obviously, since we went to court, we don't do anything. But, and I'm constantly being videotaped and pictured, as I'm sure you guys have seen. And so you would see what I'm doing. And that has been a long time ago. As for semi-trailers and your comment, Terry, them are ours. Whether we haul scrap or not, they're for farm use, they're gonna be there. I mean, so it's not the issue of having a semi-trailer and having it just sitting there. I mean, they're just gonna sit there. They can't leave on a weekly basis if there's nothing on them, because like any farmer or whatever, just because it happens to be a semi-trailer, we own semis and we own semi-trailers, and that's our vehicle of choice, I guess, is how you can put it. And if it's not being used, it's gonna sit there. It's registered, it's a workable vehicle, workable trailer, so that's just part of it. I mean, they're multi-purpose. So whether we do this or not, they're still gonna be there because they're for farming. So they'll come and they'll go, so will the semis. That's not gonna stop. Even if this goes through or this doesn't go through, because they have multiple uses. They're not bought just for that specific use. And like he said, I mean, we have conditional use permits around the area. There's one on the other side of Pine River for snowmobile repair. There's one down the road for automobile repair. They don't use any more tools, really, than we do. They take stuff apart, they put it back together. What they do with the rest of their stuff that's junk, if they take a rotor off or whatever, that's not my problem. I get rid of it. I know what I do with it, but at the same time, I mean, they use sawzalls and impacts and whatever to get stuff off. I'm sure they have to use a torch to torch stuff off. So in all reality, they have a conditional use permit to do what they do. And they work with the public, where I go get my stuff and bring it back. I use the same tools as they do. Granted, theirs drives out of the driveway and goes home to wherever, where I take mine to where I need it to go, I guess, is my thing. But them pictures, I hope they have dates on them, because they're old. Because he's been taking pictures of us for 5, 6 years, I'm sure. So.
Anything else? Okay, thank you.
Comments from the board, Mark, or are we
No,
past that
no,
stage?
No, we're not to that yet. We
Okay.
got the next application yet.
Oh, okay.
Take care of.
All right.
Next conditional use application that we will have tonight in front of us. Daniel Michael Abraham, Wautoma, Wisconsin, has made application for a conditional use in accordance with sections 58-236, paragraph 4, and 58-544, paragraph 7 of the Waushara County Zoning Code to establish a home occupation for gun repair utilizing an 18 by 23 foot portion of an existing 24 by 44 detached pole building in the RS-20 residential single-family 20,000 square foot minimum zone within the shoreline area. Location approximate 225 feet by 119 feet, parcel of land being part of Lot 1 of the Village of Mount Morris, assessor's plot in part of northeast quarter of the northeast quarter, section 21, town 19 north, range 11 east. Town of Mount Morris, fire number N3667, State Road 152. I know the applicant has stepped out. We can wait just a second. Yeah. Do you know if he's coming back? I figured he probably went to use. Okay, well, I kind of thought he might have went. Yeah, he might have went.
There it comes.
Daniel, you're up. Take your time. Yes, yeah. Want to state your name for the record, please, Daniel?
Daniel Abraham.
Daniel, can you give us a little description of what you plan on doing out there?
What I plan on doing is actually, I'm in school now to be a gunsmith for the science of firearm technology. It's basically everything from stock finishing to accurizing, head face adjustment, recrowning, glass bedding, all that kind of stuff. Basically, you know, for the next 8 months or so, I'm still going to school, but in order to legally work on anybody else's firearms for money, I have to have a federal firearms license. So I'm going through all this process now so that I don't get denied because of a zoning issue for that. Don't intend to do any kind of retail business, anything like that, in or out traffic, any of that kind of stuff anytime soon. You know, that'll all be down the road later on once we start building it up. Basically, it's just going to be by myself working out in the garage. Really no power tools other than, you know, like a rotary tool, like a Dremel, drill press, hand sanders, things like that. Nothing, nothing of any magnitude, really.
Committee has 2 questions. Just relax. You know. So, committee questions, please.
Has there been a recent survey of the property?
I don't know if there's an actual survey. CenturyLink leases the building on my property, and they had some type of survey done. I don't know if it was the whole property or just the part that they leased out.
Okay, but you do know where your lot lines
Right,
are?
Yep.
Okay, you pretty much described what you're gonna do, fix and repair guns. And, will there be any employees outside of the immediate family?
Just me.
Just you. What sort of traffic will you anticipate, and what sort of parking will you need for the
At
business?
this location, I don't plan on having any in or out traffic. I have, right now, the things I have lined up, I have friends with pretty extensive firearm collections that are willing to pay me, you know, to gain experience and stuff like that.
Sure.
Also, local retailers around here where I can pick things up, bring them in, bring them back to them. I don't plan on having any in or out traffic at that location at all.
Okay, that was my next question. What kind of traffic will there be, and will you need parking to accommodate the business in and out?
I don't plan on having anybody come in or out.
No one at all?
Maybe by appointment only, but it would be rare. I mean, it won't be.
You're gonna do business more for the retail stores and that? Is that?
I don't plan on doing any type of retail.
But you're gonna fix guns for the retail stores?
Right, yes.
So you're not gonna do it for, like, if Mark or I brought a gun in?
Eventually.
Down the road?
Down the road, right.
Okay.
Right now, it may kind of by an appointment only thing, kind of have to see how it goes.
Okay. Are you planning any changes to the driveway? And you do have adequate parking if a customer would come?
Correct, yep.
Okay, are you planning on an advertising sign for the business?
If anything, it'll just be on the building. I don't really have a plan for that yet, so.
Are you aware of the state building codes and other state requirements, and will they be met? Okay. You have other federal agencies, the Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, and Firearms. You said you're going through that
Correct.
process right now?
I'm waiting for this process so I can apply for that.
But you don't have your
I have the paperwork and everything.
But you don't have a FFL license yet?
Correct.
But you're working on it?
Correct. The biggest reason for being denied in my research is local zoning issues, so I want to make sure this is done before I apply for that and get denied for, you know, I want to make sure everything's taken care of.
Okay, so then you're going to be doing gun repairs and cleaning, is that correct?
Correct.
Are you going to sell any new or used firearms?
Not at this time.
Okay, will you sell any supplies or accessories such as ammunition or reloading?
Not at this time, no.
Okay, will you be doing any test firing after you've worked on the gun to make
Yeah,
sure?
but not at that location.
Not there? Take it to rifle range?
Right. I have a couple spots that I can go shoot out in the country to test fire or the county range.
Okay. What sort of sanitary facilities are you planning on having?
Just my house.
Just the house?
Just me, yeah.
Are there any floor drains planned in the building, and if so, how would these wastes be disposed of? I didn't think with guns there would be. Are there any other additions or buildings planned other than what you've indicated on the site plan? Will all of the activities be inside and no business or products stored outside?
Yes.
Do you need a separate fire number for the business? You don't. You're going to use the house number?
Right.
Okay. If an approval is granted, when would you make the necessary improvements and start your hours of operation?
There's really not a set plan. This is a couple of month process to get the federal firearms license. Like I said, I'm still in school doing that damn stuff. Like I said, I do have friends that are willing to pay me to work on their stuff to gain experience, but to legally do that, I still have to have the federal firearms license. So.
Okay. That's all the question I have, Mr. Chairman.
Go ahead. I'm
I
sure
have
you would
one.
have one.
You said a couple times that you're not planning on selling at this time or any ammunition at this time. What would you do if your business grew to that point? Do you have a plan?
Actually, I'm expecting a settlement from an injury I had last spring, and my goal with that is to buy a different property with land where I could put a range in and stuff like that.
So you plan to relocate if it gets to that point? Because okay, that's all I wanted to know.
Michael, anything?
Nope.
Russell?
Nope.
Bob? No. Myself, none? Okay, thank you, Michael. Or Daniel.
Rough night tonight, huh?
Oh, Daniel, Michael, yeah.
You were close.
Yeah, well, I was in the right pew, well,
I thought I was gonna get some guns out of this deal.
Correspondence.
We have a letter received today from W. Paul and Barbara J. Brinkman, Brinkman. It's addressed to dear members of the Waushara County Planning and Zoning Committee. This letter comes to you expressing full support for approval of the request of Daniel Michael Abraham to establish a home occupation for gun repair, utilizing a portion of an existing pole building on the above referenced property. We are neighbors living directly across Emerald Lane on the back side of this property. The letter of notice of public hearing that we received by mail regarding this matter was the first we had heard of Daniel's plans, and it raised numerous questions and concerns in our minds and in the minds of our neighbors. Concerns related primarily to questions and fears of what it would mean to have a gun repair shop near our homes. Will there be firing of weapons to test them? Will there be issues of security for our families and children? However, after visiting personally with Daniel, I learned that he has a very solid plan for gaining his credentials and licensure as a gunsmith, that there will be no firing of weapons on or near the property, and that there will be no retail customers coming to this property. I was also assured that security systems are already in place on the property. I researched the Sonoran Desert Institute and the associate degree in firearm technology that Daniel is pursuing, verifying the academic degree and accreditation of the institute. I also contacted the federal ATF office in Milwaukee and spoke with an officer there about licensing of a gun repair business. I also talked with Waushara County Sheriff Jeff Nett regarding this matter. In conclusion, I feel reasonably assured that there is no reason to oppose this request by our neighbor, Daniel Abraham. My wife Barbara and I regret that we are unable to attend the public hearing regarding this application for conditional use, and we publicly offer this letter indicating our support for approval. Thank you. Signed, sincerely, W. Paul Brinkman. And on September 18th, we received a letter from the town of Mount Morris. It's addressed to me, Dear Terry. The Mount Morris Town Board is in support of the conditional use permit for Daniel Michael Abraham. The board has addressed with Mr. Abraham two concerns: that the property at N3667 State Road 152 be cleaned up and maintained in clean and orderly state on an ongoing basis, and that no guns be discharged on the property due to the location of said property in the township with numerous neighbors. With those two understandings, the Mount Morris Town Board is in support of this proposed conditional use. Thank you for your interest, and feel free to contact me if you have any questions. That's signed sincerely, Alan Anderson, Clerk, Town of Mount Morris. That's it.
Okay, that's all the correspondence. Registered to speak in favor, Greg Foster.
Thank you. My name is Greg Foster. I'm speaking today as a supervisor of the town of Mount Morris and also as the chairman of the Land Use Plan Commission. And I just wanted to say that you've seen our position with respect to the town board. From a land use plan perspective, it is also consistent with what we would see in wanting to establish this type of business. We have one in operation right now in the town of Mount Morris. It's been in business for many years and has been a good neighbor to the properties that are there. So we're in support of what he wants to do here.
Okay. All right, thank you, Greg. Staff comments, please.
Again, for the record, the committee has previously been furnished with a copy of the site plan and all the other pertinent data for this application. We're looking at a conditional use, which is listed in the zone. They're usually located in the general agricultural zone. However, the code does allow the committee to consider these in residential zones if they can remain in keeping with the surrounding properties and uses. Remember, it's the landowner's responsibility to provide the information that shows the committee this use is still in keeping with the zone and area it is proposed for. When the committee visited the property, they noted that the visibility at the driveway location is good and that traffic is slower here, that a separate address number does not appear to be necessary, and that the landowner is in the process of cleaning up the property and setting up the gun repair shop. In this particular case, I don't think working on firearms would be an issue as long as all safety and licensing aspects of such an operation are adhered to. However, I do feel strongly that testing of firearms should not take place in the residential zone. And also, this does not appear to be a location for retail sales of either firearms or ammunition. So if the committee considers this application for approval, I think they should think carefully about the conditions that they would place on it so it remains in keeping with the residential neighborhood and the landowners that own property here. That's it for my comments.
Is there anything that you'd like to add, Daniel? Okay. Okay, that concludes our applications for tonight. We will now conduct our business meeting.